Long time no see. I'm back, and today I am going to show you how to knit my very popular owl gloves. You can call them owl mitts, you can really call them whatever you like, it doesn't matter. So I've had a lot of requests for people to ask me to write this again for a flat pattern that's knit on 2 needles. It's still going to be a ton of work even if I do it that way, but I figured, you know, instead of rewriting the whole pattern, why don't I just show you how to knit in the round, and then you can just use the existing pattern I have. It's much easier for me anyway, because quite frankly, pattern writing is a little boring. It's been a long time since I've made a video. A few things have changed. I don't know if you've noticed. Cat's still around. He's here right now. I don't know if he will join us. He may or may not. He's kind of his own animal and does what a good cat does. If you don't like preamble, I'm going to put a card in here for later on. You can just go through. I'll add a timestamp right here. That's where you need to start the video if you don't want to listen to me talking. You're going to need a 3.5 for a small, 4.0 for a medium, and 5.0 for a large. And that is the Canadian references and UK references. So that's like a 3.5 millimeter, 4.0 millimeter, or a 5 millimeter knitting needle. You're also going to need a cable needle, which is this. There's also different forms of this. I prefer the actual like shepherd hook one. It just makes my life easier. I quite enjoy it. And this just lets you pull certain stitches forward and certain stitches back depending on what order you need to knit them in. And also I have a pair of scissors here. Nice little ones that are easy to get to. Another thing that I want to talk about is the size of the needles that you're going to need for this one. If you want to make small ones or if you want to make large ones, you need to change the size of your needles. The stitch count is exactly the same regardless of what size needles you're going to use. It just makes it easier for me because, okay, the camera is now going to shake because he's putting his stent on there. Yeah, he's doing his cat rub thing. Yeah, that was him. 7, do you think you could not? Hey. Hey, hey. Okay, he's still putting his smell all over everything. Yes, the camera stand is yours. Yes, that is now yours. Delightful. He could have done this, you know, 2 minutes ago. He could have done this earlier this morning. This has been set up for a while. But now he has to do it. I'm also going to say that this yarn, ta-da! The beige with flex is definitely the most popular yarn that I have used to make these gloves. I sell tons of these on Etsy. I'm going to place a nice screenshot of my Etsy shop here. There you go, that's my Etsy shop. Been doing it for a while now, over a decade. So yeah, you can trust me and stuff. I'm not ripping anybody off. Anywho, long story short, this is the yarn that I use. There's a number of different makers who make this exact same yarn. I am not gonna vouch for either one of them or all of them. Yarn is yarn. I prefer to use acrylic yarn, but that's just me. I'm reselling stuff, so I'm trying to get yarn that is cheap as I can and make as much profit off of it as I can. If you're making it for like, you know, your niece or your grandkids or yourself, you might want to use a better yarn. That's fucking cat. Really? Now? Really? You moved the whole camera this time, you know. What a jerk. You're a bit of a douchey McDouchertons, aren't you? That's not what I was gonna say. If you would like to buy the yarn, I am going to put links to all the awesomeness on Amazon. I'm also an Amazon affiliate, apparently I have to tell you this. That if you do buy stuff through those links that are on either my website or that I'm linking to in this YouTube video, I do have links. You can buy the right needle sizes and you will be able to buy the yarn. And I'll also link up to the pattern because I do have the pattern for sale for a whopping 99 cents. Or you can read it for free on my website. I don't really care. Do what you want. Eyeballs on my website are fine because I still get money for ads on there. So that's the price, right? So there's that. He's playing with the styrofoam now. Okay, so leave a bit of a tail when you're starting your cast on. That way it just makes it easier to sew in the end when you're done. Or work in the end, however you feel you want to call that. So you're going to want to cast on 36 stitches. The way that I do it is that I cast on my 36 stitches right away onto one needle. It just makes it easier. And don't cast on too tightly because you're going to do ribbing and it needs to be able to stretch. And if you do it too tight, then it won't stretch the way that it needs to. Not super loose, not super tight. Like if you can hear your needle squeaking, you're too tight. If it's loose-ish, make sure you have 36 stitches on your needle. It'll become pretty self-evident once you start doing this. Now, what you're gonna want to do is divide this as evenly up onto your 3 needles that you're gonna use as possible. So I put 12 stitches on each needle. So you just count off 12. Okay, slide it so it doesn't come off. And then you're gonna slide it down to the other end. Grab another needle, same size needle. So to make sure you have your 36, just make sure you got 12 on your middles. 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, perfect. Okay, grab your 4th needle. So whatever needle that you have in your dominant hand, so if you're right-handed, it will be in your right hand. If you're left-handed, it's in your left. This is referred to as your working needle. If I was left-handed, this would be my working needle. Okay, so arrange your needles a little bit. Yeah, they're a little bit floppy. Don't worry, doesn't matter if they flop, it's fine. Nobody ever cried about floppy needles. Okay, so anyway, you're gonna start off by doing a knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. We want the ribbing because it's nice and stretchy and it is tight around your hand, but not like super tight. It's just like forms a nice cuff. So what you wanna do, knit your first stitch. Pull your yarn forward and purl the second stitch. Knit the next, purl the next, knit the next, purl the next, you're going to end on a purl if you have an even number of stitches, which we do, we have 12. And one of the things that you want to do, and this is probably one of the easiest mistakes that you're going to make to either gain or lose a stitch. A lot of people, when they do this, don't pull their yarn back again, and you'll catch it and you'll end up knitting an extra stitch in between your needles when you're knitting. If you just put it in, make sure that your yarn is back behind your knitting needle and just knit that next stitch and make sure there's only 1 on there. And then you knit, purl to the end of this knitting needle 2. Okay, and then once again, make sure your yarn is back when you're starting on your next needle. Put it in like you're going to knit. Whoops. Knit it. Pull your yarn forward to purl like you would. Purl. And then you just keep knit, purl all the way down. Once again on this needle, you're going to end on a purl. So that is 1 row. Now, the easiest thing about knitting in the round to know when you're starting is you can use this chunky yarn. This is your marker for when you're starting your next round. So whenever you pass this, you're starting a next round. So we have now knitted 1 row. What we're going to do now is knit 9 more of those rows for a total of 10 rows of knit purl. And when you're just starting your next row, you do exactly the same thing. Knit, purl, all the way down to the end of the row. Now you just knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl on every single one of these till you have a total of 10 rows. And I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done. So I am now done my 10 rows. Ta-da, look, see, and it's all nice and stretchy, woo, woo, woo. And I've done it just enough to, when I did the casting on, it was just loose enough that it allows for some stretch, and then it pops right back into where it is. So if you just So now that we're here, what you're going to do is knit 3 rows around evenly. So you just knit in every single stitch for 3 rows. It's not rocket science. Or if you're a Trailer Park Boy fan, it's not rocket appliances. It's just knitting. Knitting on 3 needles is not as intimidating as it looks. It really, if you already know how to knit and are capable of knitting anything flat and a variety of stitches, if you've done cable knit stitching before, you know how to add a stitch, you know how to subtract a stitch, whatever. It actually really isn't that hard. It's just your splits that sometimes can get a little bit confusing. But once you get the hang of it, knitting in the round is just as simple as knitting flat. And you don't get that ugly seam. You know, you can make it as pretty as you want and do a perfect stitch up the side, but you still have a lump when you have a seam. And I don't like it. I'm just gonna say it. I don't like it. No, sir, I don't like it. So this is where you're gonna start either making a left-handed glove or a right-handed glove. For the ease of things, we're going to start with a left-handed glove just because that's what it is in the pattern. Now, the only difference between the left-handed glove and the right-handed glove is where the owl is going to be on the back of the hand. It really isn't that confusing. At least that's what I think, but I wrote the pattern, so maybe that's just me. The thumb of the mitt is always the same regardless of whether you're making the right or the left hand. I have you make the thumb the first thing and then the owl comes after. So what you're going to do first, right or left hand, you're going to knit the first stitch and then you're going to make a stitch. Now I always pick up a loop in between the 2 stitches and twist it ever so slightly. I pull it forward and then I put my needle in and I hold it with my finger and I put my needle through the loop and knit. So that is make 1. And then I knit a stitch, and then I make another one. I pull it up, pull it forward, the loop that's on the non-working needle, and I put the working needle through it, and then I knit it. So now you're going to have 2 extra stitches on your needle. After you make 1, again, you're going to knit 6 stitches for a left-handed mitt. If you are making a right-handed mitt, you are going to knit 19 stitches. So left 6 stitches, right 19. And then you're going to purl 1. For me, I always transfer whatever stitches are left over on my needle to the next needle. And I make the split between the needles on this purl. It just makes your life a little bit easier when you're passing stitches around and back and forth and things. That way, that stitch won't fall off when you're doing your cable forward or cable back, depending on where you are in the pattern. So now that you've purled the stitch and passed the stitches over onto the next needle, you're going to knit 8 stitches. These are going to become the base for the owl. And you're going to purl the stitch. And then you knit all the remaining stitches over to where you started. And once again, this lining up to that is where you started. Whether you're making your left or right-handed glove, doesn't matter. You are going to knit in every stitch around to the purl. So you're going to knit in those make one stitches that you just did, and you're going to keep going, and we're purling. Okay, so you're going to want to get this, which we had before, the cable stitch holder, and you're going to want to take the first 2 stitches and put them at the front of your work. Knit the next 2 stitches. Pick up your cable needle and knit those 2 stitches that are on there. Take the next 2 stitches, hold those to the back of your work, knit the next 2 stitches, and then you're going to knit the 2 stitches off your cable needle. Just like that. Put that away because you don't need it. Then you're going to purl in the next stitch, and then you're going to knit every stitch around to the beginning of the row, to your little marker again. So now that we've done the cable round, you just knit to the purl again. So you knit in every single stitch. Knit, 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 knit. Knitty McKnittertons. Purl in the next. And then you're going to knit in all of those stitches that you just did the cabling over. The cable 4 forward, the cable 4 back. And then those were the 8 stitches that you just knit. Then you're going to purl again, and then you're going to knit around to the start of the row. So now we're going to be making the gusset of the thumb a little bit bigger again. When I knit mitts, I do every 3rd round is an increase round for the thumb. So you're going to add 2 stitches every 3rd round when you're making the thumb. You knit the first stitch, make a stitch, and now we have 3 stitches in between. So you pick up a stitch. So depending on whether you're making the left or the right hand, there will either be 6 stitches or 19 stitches after you make that last increase. And you're going to purl that next stitch. And you knit these 8. Purl the 1, knit to the beginning of the row. With your little beginning. And now, just like before, you're going to knit around to the purl, purl the 8, purl, knit to the end of the row. And you're going to do that for 2 rows just like we did before. Okay, so now that we've got those 2 rows done, you're going to want to do an increase for the thumb gusset again. So you're going to knit the first stitch, pick up a stitch, and knit it. You're going to knit 5 stitches now in between the 2 mate stitches. So 1, 2. So you're going to pick up a stitch, knit it, and knit to the purl. Purl the stitch, knit 8, purl the stitch, and knit to the beginning of the row again. And now, just like before, you're going to knit around to the purl, purl the 8, purl, knit to the end of the row. And you're going to do that for 2 rows just like we did before. Okay, this is actually a super busy round. That's the only way I can explain it. So not only are we going to increase once again for the thumb, but we're also going to do the crossover for the cable stitches for the owl to make the neck or end the head. Okay, so as always, when you're making the thumb, you knit the first stitch, increase another stitch, and now we're going to knit 7. Then you're going to pick up a stitch and knit it. So we just increased again. So then you're going to knit to the purl, 6 stitches or 19, depending if you're making the left 6 stitches or the right 19 stitches. You're going to purl this stitch. Then you get your cable needle. So you take the first 2 stitches, hold it to the front of your work. Knit the next 2 stitches. Knit the 2 stitches off your cable needle. Then you take your cable needle again, take the next 2 stitches off, transfer them onto the cable needle, hold them to the back of your work, and knit the next 2 stitches. Then you're going to take the stitches that are on your cable needle and you're going to knit those. Purl the next stitch and knit to the beginning of the row. All right, so the next row, we're going to knit every single stitch over to the purl. Doesn't matter, right or left hand. Knit every single stitch. And this is getting to be quite a few because we've increased quite a bit for the thumb. This is probably going to be a fair amount of stitches if you're making the right-handed mitt. So we're going to purl that next stitch. And here's where things are going to get a little bit different now. You're going to knit those first 2 stitches. Then you're going to purl 4. You're going to knit the next 2 stitches. And then you're going to purl the next stitch and knit to the beginning of the row. You're knitting over to that marker once again. So that's the row that you're going to be repeating a bunch of times. So row 24 is where you're going to knit to the purl, do the purl, 2 knits, purl 4, knit 2, purl 1, knit back to the beginning of the row. All right, now we're going to increase for the thumb gusset again, and that is the exact same thing as we have been doing this whole time. The only difference is how many stitches in between the make 1 stitch you're going to do. Because you're going to be repeating these rows so many times, you can write down the row number when you're doing it so you know what row you're on. We are going to make another increase for the thumb gusset. So you knit your first stitch, pick up a stitch, knit that. Knit 9 stitches. Pick up a stitch again. And knit to the purl. Purl in the purl. Knit in the next 2 knits. Purl in the purls. Knit in the next 2 stitches. Purl in the 1 stitch. Knit to the beginning of the row. Row 24 is where you're going to knit to the purl, do the purl, 2 knits, purl 4, knit 2, purl 1, knit back to the beginning of the row. Watching a little bit of Vikings as I was doing the repetitive rows, because repetitive. Okay, so anyway, now we are on row 29. So you're going to knit the first stitch, make a stitch again. So we're going to knit 11. Make a stitch, and then knit to the P. And to be quite a few on there, but don't worry, we're done increasing now. We don't have to do any more. Purl in the purl. Knit in the next 2 knits. Purl in the purls. Knit in the next 2 stitches. Purl in the 1 stitch. Knit to the beginning of the row. Now we're going to repeat row 24 again. So you knit to the purl, purl, knit 2, knit 4, knit 2, purl 1, knit to the beginning of the row 2 times. So now we are on row 32. So what you're going to do now is you're going to knit that first stitch. And for ease of use, I'm going to pass that stitch back over onto my one needle just so it doesn't fall off. All right, so then you want to get your stitch holder, open her up, and you're going to pass the next 13 stitches onto this stitch holder. So you just pick them up like you were going to knit them, pass them on over. Now mine is like a big safety pin, so I just close it up. Get it out of the way. You're gonna wanna pull this as tight as you can, but not like ridiculously tight, just so it's snug and you don't have a big loose hole. You're gonna get a hole anyway, it doesn't matter what you do. But you're gonna try to make it as tight between this stitch and that last stitch that you passed back over as you can. So it looks like that. So you're going to knit that stitch and you're going to knit to the P or knit to the purl just like we have been this entire time. Purl that stitch, knit the next 2, purl the next 4, knit the next 2, purl the next 1, knit to the beginning of the row. You can pass the stitch back or you can just leave it. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to make a difference, but it's your call. You can just leave it where it was when you passed it over. You're now going to knit to the purl. Your stitch holder kind of gets in the way, but it's really not that big of a deal. So you knit over to the purl. You're going to purl that, and now we need to get our cable needle again. And this time you're going to take those 2 knit stitches, hold them forward, knit the next 2 stitches, knit the 2 off of the cable needle, take the next 2 stitches, hold them back, knit the next 2 stitches, knit the 2 stitches off the cable needle, don't need that anymore, like literally don't need that anymore. Purl the next stitch, knit to the beginning of the row again, we're starting on row 34. You're going to knit over to the purl. You're going to purl this stitch like you always have. And then you're going to purl all those 8 stitches that we had done before. So purl the 8. Then you're going to purl that stitch that we've been purling this whole time, and you're going to knit to the beginning of the row. So now we're starting row 35. What you're going to do on this one is you're going to go back to doing this ribbing. So it's the ribbing that's going to be across the top of your hand, closer to your fingers. So you knit P around. So knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, just like you did at the beginning when we started this. Okay, so when you get around to the beginning of the row, still knitting and purling, knitting and purling, knitting and purling. If you've done it right, you're going to have 2 stitches at the end. You are going to want to purl those together. So you're going to purl 2 together. Boom. There you go. And now you're going to do 4 more rows of knit purl ribbing evenly. So you're going to knit purl all the way around, and it will work out because you've purled those last 2 stitches together. Knit purl, knit purl, knit purl, knit purl will work for 4 rounds more. Now we have finished those 4 rows of knit 1 purl 1 knitting. We're going to cast off. And when you're doing the top of this, just like with the beginning, you're going to want to do this loosely. So you're going to want your loops fairly large. For me, myself, when I do cast off with ribbing, I always do whatever it is. So if it's a knit stitch, I'm going to knit into it and then pull the loop over to cast off. And when the next stitch is a purl, I'm going to purl that stitch and then pull the loop over. And keep your loops fairly loose, definitely looser than you would if you were doing regular knitting. Once again, you want it to stretch over the fingers with the ribbing, but be able to go back to be what it is when it's not being stretched. So you need to have that flexibility in it. So you just do that all the way around. And then when you're done with your needle, throw it over there. So I'm still knitting in the knits. Take the stitch over, purl in the purl. Pass the stitch over, knit in the knit. So we're almost done. Exciting times. Another thing that I like to do when I'm finishing off my work is that you're going to see that there is the first noticeable stitch from when you were casting off. It looks just like that. So what I always do is I put my needle under that stitch like I'm going to pick it up and pull the yarn through. And then with the last loop that was on my needle, I put that over it. Just like that. Just poof. Just like that. And then you are finished, so you need your handy dandy little scissors. Snip it off and literally just pull it through and you're done. And if you've cast off correctly, you're not going to notice any sort of weird tightness when you pull it like that, but it'll go back to where it needs to be and look fine and dandy when you're done. So now your glove is going to look like this. Ta-da! Look how talented you are! Good for you! Oh my God, that was fabulous. We now have to deal with these 13 stitches that are left from our thumb that we made. And so you're going to still need to have all of your 4 needles that you have. And it doesn't really matter how many stitches you're going to put on each needle. It's really your choice. I, generally speaking, do 4, 4, and whatever is left. Seems to work out really good. And you literally are just going to pass the stitches over onto your needle. Super quick, super easy. So just count out 4. Get another needle. Count out another 4. You just slip them on like that. It's not complicated. It's not hard. Just like most of the stuff. Looks like it should be really hard. Totally not hard. And so you put the last 5 stitches on there. Regardless of what you do, you're going to get a hole here. And it doesn't matter how fabulous you are. It doesn't matter how much you wish and pray that it wouldn't happen. It's going to happen. So what I recommend, make sure that you leave enough of a length of the yarn so you can sew up that hole when you're finished. It's easier to have too much than not enough. I don't know, 12 inches, 14 inches, whatever you feel. It's entirely up to you. And knit these stitches, what I always do, I just wrap it around really quick and pull it through the first stitch, slide it down a little bit, and then I literally am just going to knit in the round all of these stitches. Just knit them. That's it, just knit. Nothing complicated, nothing hard, nothing to write home about, just knit. When you get to the end, you're going to have this like big huge stitch. Don't worry, you can fix that when you're sewing it up in the end. Now when you have this thread, give her a bit of a yank and hold it tight so it doesn't pull loose when you're doing your second round. And then you're going to knit this round also. And then we're going to knit one more time. So you're doing 3 rounds all together for the thumb. If you want to do more rounds, that's entirely up to you. I just don't like fiddly knitting like this. It drives me a little crazy. Like switching back and forth between needles for 4 stitches. Oh dear Lord. There's only so much I can take. And that's about all I can do is 3 rounds worth of that. But if you want to do 5, that's okay. 6, 12, whatever. 12 is usually long enough for a whole entire thumb, so you may not want to do that much. That'd be a little crazy. But I don't know, maybe I have short stubby thumbs. I don't know. But 3 seems to put it in a nice spot on the back of your thumb. Over your knuckle, it just seems wrong to me. So I would say have it less. I certainly don't think you'd want to do any more than 6 for sure. So now that we've done the 3, once again, we're going to cast off, but very loosely. So make your loops a little bit bigger than you should normally. And then we're gonna do the end just like I showed you before, where you pick up what looks like that stitch. And then you just grab the loop, throw it over. Snippy McSnippertons, done. Handy dandy scissors, pull it through. You, my dear, my tribe, have finished your mitt. Ta-da! And because it's so super awesome, you can put it on. And if you don't put on something you make, I don't know if you're dead or not inside, but you probably are. For the eyes, I actually found these little jewels that I'm sticking on. I found some really good glue and I just do that. You can also use a set of 4 buttons. I don't like buttons because I hate sewing. So I am not a button fan. When you sew this up, I'm not really going to show you how to do that because this isn't rocket science, and chances are you've sewed up a thing or 2 in the past. However you feel comfortable making that hole go away, just, you know, a back and forth stitch, whatever. Everybody is going to get that hole when you're making this. Now you're going to make the right-handed mitt. I showed you how to make the left. Like I said, the only thing that's different with this is how many stitches are going to be in between the thumb and where the owl starts. That's the only difference. It's the exact same thing. No different, nothing. And there you go. Boo boo. That's what it looks like. So yeah, you can make this bigger or smaller. And I suppose I should do all my things. So I'm not a huge fan of the social media, even though I'm posting this on YouTube. Social media. But if you want to follow me, you can. I rarely post anything anymore because frankly, I just don't care. I really don't care. I don't care how many followers I have. I don't care how many likes I have. But I do occasionally put some stuff on there. I find it very much like talking to an empty room. If you want to follow me, I'm Janice in Joplin. You can follow me there. I'm also known as Janice the Knitter over on Facebook. I have a page that I do stuff on occasionally. If you want to really do anything, go over to my website, KweenBee.com. All of these patterns I have are written out in full for free on my website. You can read this for free, just like I did on my phone here. You can do that on your phone too, or your tablet, whatever. If you want to have a version that you can print, you can go also buy the PDF file on my website. And I've also mentioned before, you can get it on Etsy and Ravelry. And I also have it on Amazon. If you really like this owl motif, I also have this on a pair of slippers. Depending on how well this video goes over, I may or may not do a how-to tutorial for that one too. I don't know. I haven't made videos in a long time because they're a ton of work and I fucking hate editing, and I'm gonna have a shit ton of that to do for this, and I'm not looking forward to it, so you're welcome that I'm digging deep and going taking one for the team. Anyway, so that's what I gotta say about that. I don't know. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If there's another tutorial that you would prefer that I make, whether it be for one of my slippers or whatevs, I'm possibly up for that. I'm not gonna say I am, because it might not be. Thanks for coming out. Glad to see you here. I'm gonna go do the other right hand mitt for this order that I need to get done. And I'm also gonna take some close-up videos so you can see what I actually did. So with that, thank you, my tribe. I shall see you another time. Leave comments in the comment section, because apparently that's what I'm supposed to say. And hit that like button and subscribe, because we just live for that these days, I guess. I don't know, weird times, whatevs. So anyway, peace. See you later. Bye. GoPro, stop recording. GoPro, stop recording.